Good morning, everybody. If I could have your attention, welcome to Automotive Management Live and this session on what we've called the after-sales evolution. You can call it revolution, you can call it a pain, but we are going to be looking at the challenges that EVs present to you with two very special speakers, Gareth from the ICDP and Liam from EMAC. We're going to take us through a session, like I say, looking at some of those challenges, the pressures on margins, the potential drops in revenue and how to counter them, and even the mystery subject potentially of battery cell repairs. So let me hand over. We've got half an hour of presentation followed by up to 15 minutes of questions. So please have those ready at that time. So over to who's starting? Go, Gareth. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Jeremy. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, so thank you all for attending. I'm Gareth Arnold. I'm a senior researcher with ICDP, and you might have a question who ICDP are. We are primarily a research organisation that works across Europe looking at automotive distribution, so everything post-factory gate. We're in quite a unique and I think quite a advantageous position because we have members that range across the entire industry, from manufacturers, large dealer groups, dealer associations, suppliers, and all across Europe. So we are, I think, as I said, quite well positioned to be talking about a lot of the issues that we're facing in the industry. In addition to our core research program, we also do consulting work. We've worked on, been an expert witness on legal cases. We've helped form distribution strategies, wide range of topics there. And we also sell data, primarily in the form of consumer data, well, not consumer data, consumer survey data, I should say, and what we call the European Car Distribution Handbook, which is about the number of franchise points by brand, by market across the entirety of Europe. Now, if I can just introduce us to some of the topics we'll be talking about today. It really feels like I think we're driving through the fog at the moment. We can't really see very far into the future. We can't really see what the issues that we're going to be facing, but we know nebulously that they're all around a lot of these. We know there's economic pressures that are facing the industry, both at a dealer level, but also kind of, I guess, holistically facing all of us. We've had a number of years of supply chain volatility on both the new car and the used car side causing issues. We have environmental concerns kind of under the water, popping their head up every now and again and causing issues. Technology change, regulation. And I could quite easily spend an hour talking to you about all of these, but I'm not going to. I'm going to focus on just one of these today, on the technology change side, and specifically on after-sales and how electric vehicles are going to impact the after-sales business and potentially what we in the industry can do to mitigate some of the issues that that's going to cause. Now, we've, for a number of years, been doing what we call our aftermarket forecast. We've been looking at the number and the value of operations of servicing, repairs and maintenance and tyre changes across Europe. And to do this, we have quite a complex system. I won't go into the details of it today because it is very boring unless you're a bit of a data nerd like me. But primarily, the things that we can see that are influencing the total repair and maintenance market are electrification. We know that that's the big trend that we're talking about today. We know that it is ramping up and it is becoming more of an issue on everybody's radar. This then feeds into the park features, so the total number of cars that are in the market and how that is split up between electric vehicles, ICE vehicles, what the ages of the car park is, etc. And all of that influences the car usage, how far people are driving, what they're using cars for. And by combining all of those and a number of other features, again, you get on the total repair and maintenance market. And the gist of this is that we have been, for the past 10, 15 years now, looking at a drop in the total repair and maintenance market across Europe out towards sort of 2030. Now, specifically talking about repair and maintenance for battery electric vehicles, the primary, I guess, driver in terms of the frequency, the volumes of these on the maintenance side is the specific service schedules that BEVs have. At the moment, we're seeing that this service schedule is typically aligned with the manufacturer's ICE vehicle service schedule. In some cases, it is starting to diverge differently. Peugeot, for example, they have a 2-year service schedule on their ICE vehicles, but on BEVs, it's 2 years and then every 1 year. So they're changing that. And at the same time as having this service schedule, clearly what is happening at a service is going to be impacting the volume of repairs, the amount of labour that is being generated. BEV services are relatively simple compared to an ICE vehicle. There are fewer things to change. There's no oil for a start. And a lot of the time it is just inspecting the vehicle. In terms of repairs, BEVs are more reliable than ICE vehicles. The, collected wisdom, which we have backed up from a number of manufacturers, is that BEVs need a repair, and by this we mean a mechanical repair, not a crash repair, roughly half as often as an ICE vehicle. Fewer moving parts, the technology is more advanced, vehicles are more reliable. It means that they're having repairs less often. And then tyres. This is, I guess, the one good note in all of this is that BEVs do wear their tyres quicker than ICE vehicles. They have more torque going to the wheels. People aren't necessarily used to that, so they cause heavier wear on the tyres, roughly at a ratio of 1.2 for a BEV compared to 1 for an ICE vehicle. So it's a mixed bag. You have some negatives on the maintenance and repair side, some positives on the tyre side in terms of how BEVs influence the number of repairs that are going on. In terms of the value of these repairs, the revenues that they're generating, again, it's a bit of a mixed bag. On the maintenance side, so servicing, roughly speaking, every service that a BEV has compared to an ICE vehicle is on average about half the revenue. This does vary by manufacturers. We've spoken to some manufacturers where it's 30% of the comparable ICE revenue, some where it's 70%, but it does average around half. On the repair side, although they're having repairs less frequently than ICE vehicles, when they are having repairs, the value is very much the same. It's still an expensive piece of equipment that has gone wrong, that needs to be repaired, needs to be replaced. So there's no real reason for us to be thinking, and no real reason from manufacturers that we've spoken to tell us that a BEV repair is cheaper or more expensive than an ICE vehicle. And on the tyre side, while they're having their tyres replaced more often than ICE vehicles, these tyres can also be more expensive. We know that a number of manufacturers are prescribing specific tyres for BEVs, whether that's a specific brand, specific make, or in some cases, a very unusual size that isn't used anywhere else on the rest of their range, so it does cause some issues there. A number of quotes across Europe that kind of supports all of this. I won't go into all the detail, but I'm sure they'll be available after the presentation if you're interested. So we have some variances on the volume side, we have some variances on the revenue side. And also we have, I guess, more qualitative impact of BEVs compared to ICEs. We have the investments that need to be made at a repairer level. You need the equipment and the tooling in the workshop. If you're a franchise dealer, you have to install charging stations. If you're not a franchise dealer, you don't have to install charging stations, but you might be incentivized to install charging stations if you're looking to capture some of that BEV market. There's the training that needs to go into repairing EVs, and in some cases you need to have regular updates on the specific tooling that you've got available. And then also there's the people side. We know there's a bit of an issue in terms of technician shortages going on across Europe at the moment, but at the same time it's a bit of a challenge in terms of making sure you are hiring the right people who are EV qualified, who have had those training sessions, and you don't want them going off to a competitor once you've trained them up as well. So keeping them is also a big issue. Now, in terms of what this means, again, I've talked about briefly a lot of the influences that go into behind some of these figures, but this is looking at the average number of repair and maintenance operations per vehicle in 2019 for the blue bars and in 2030 in the red bars. And we've split this out by the age of the vehicle. This is assuming a 75% penetration in BEV car sales by 2030, and it's covering the markets that you can see in the top right there. Two main messages from this as far as I'm concerned. The first is when you look at the 0 to 2 out towards 5 to 6 year old park or vehicles, there's a drop in terms of the 2019 average number of R&M jobs compared to the 2030. So the younger cars are going to be generating less work on a per car basis and potentially in a total basis as well due to changes in the car park structure than they do in 2019. And at the other end, we can see on the 9 to 10 and 10-year-old plus car parks, the inverse is true. In 2030, those older cars are going to be generating more revenue, more operations than in 2019. So we're going to see more of a split, I think, between the younger car park being one area to focus on and the older car park being a second area for people to focus on. And when you look at what this means in terms of the actual number of operations that are going to be kind of done in franchise workshops, the data on this slide is looking at the UK. We have what we call the braking scenario in blue. This is assuming 75% BEV share in new car registrations by 2030. And the what we call acceleration scenario in red, which is a growth in the overall market, meaning that only 50% of new cars sold are BEVs in 2030. I appreciate that this doesn't necessarily fit with what the government is saying is going to happen in terms of new car sales targets, but we're trying to look at what could happen. The big issue is we can see that even in the better scenario for the franchise dealers, we are anticipating a large drop in the terms of the number of operations that they will be conducting at 2030 compared to today. Now, there are a number of areas where they can clearly target to try and counteract this drop. Tyres. I've said that BEVs generate more tyre operations at a higher tyre value than ICE vehicles. So clearly, this is one area where franchised workshops can perhaps focus on being able to provide that. It is difficult. Tyres are typically something that is seen as an independent aftermarket side of things. Consumers are less interested in having their tyres done at a franchise workshop due to a range of reasons. But given some of the consumer views on BEVs and how they kind of interact with the franchise world, this is an area where they can work on there. The second is the average basket value. We talked about service revenues being roughly half of, for BEV compared to an ICE. Clearly, that average basket value is going to be dropping significantly in that case. So what do? Upselling, BEV-specific accessories, lots of opportunity to try and counteract that. Customer retention. Specifically, we're thinking here of things like service plans, targeting consumers, trying to keep them in the franchise workshops longer than they traditionally would. Now, BEVs do have that underlying element of consumers wanting to stay in the franchise channels longer due to the kind of the perception they have of the technology being more complex than ICE vehicles, it needing to stay in the franchise world for longer. So that is a benefit. But tools like some of the things that EMAC provide, and I'll let Liam talk to you a little bit about that later, are a great opportunity to be able to help improve that customer retention on BEV-specific elements. But that is very critical. The BEV-specific elements are what needs to be focused on because they do have very different consumer demands for a BEV retention plan than for an ICE retention plan. Jeremy mentioned that we might be talking a little bit about cell replacement for BEVs in the future. There is some opportunity, I think, for franchise dealers to get into what we call battery ecosystem activities. So looking at what they can do specifically around the battery side of BEVs to kind of target customers. I think cell replacement isn't there at the moment. It might be there in the future. It is a technology that needs to come down from the manufacturers rather than being pushed up from the dealers. So we're going to have to wait for that. But there is a potential here to start looking at what can be done with regards to battery health checks, providing certification about the state of that battery health when they're looking to sell their vehicles, which on the used car side we know is a big issue related to residual values of BEVs, and that's something that consumers really do value, is having some independent verification of the quality of that battery health. So perhaps this is something that dealers could focus on in the future. On the independent side, we are seeing some moves as well for what they can do to target this. A lot of this is coming from the larger independent chains, but at the same time, we are seeing some moves from small independent repairers trying to target and focus on the BEV side of things. EV training, equipping the outlets with the correct technology. We've seen a lot of the chains are focusing on this, but at the same time, as I said, those smaller independents are actually getting in on this as well. A couple of years ago, I was speaking to a training provider in the UK. They said that their most popular course for small independent workshops was around BEV training, around training their repairers to be able to repair the BEVs. We've seen some of the larger chains across Europe targeting, looking at specific menu pricing for BEVs, having a separate price schedule for BEVs compared to ICEs. In Norway, a couple of dealers have actually looked at changing their labour rate for a BEV compared to an ICE vehicle, increasing it. They've not had much pushback from customers. The customers appreciate that this is new technology that has new training requirements for the repairers and therefore may have a higher skill floor than for repairing ICE vehicles. So they're kind of open to that. So combining those two with the menu pricing, the increased labor rate, could perhaps offer some opportunities on the independent side there. We're seeing some chains, some repairers trying to focus on becoming EV specialists, so taking that menu pricing one step further, really marketing themselves as being an independent focused on repairing, maintaining BEVs. Cooperating with new entrant BEV brands. Fauver in France is cooperating with Aways to provide repair and maintenance for them. They're not introducing any dealers in Europe at all, but they are entering the market. The repair and maintenance needs are going to be covered by Fauver in France. And then services around e-mobility, so trying to keep the car on the road as long as possible. Halfords in the UK partnered with Boxed to look at providing energy for home charging as well. Lots of opportunities here for people to be preparing for the future on the independent side as well as the franchise side. But I think really to kind of conclude my presentation today, which I appreciate has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour around all of the issues facing BEVs, well, there are 4 areas that we can really be looking at. The biggest issue is, as I said, that middle ground. We've seen a decrease in terms of the number of operations per vehicle in the younger car, an increase in the number of operations per car in the older car park. So the middle ground, I think, is going to be where we're starting to see the issues. The independents moving from the older to the younger park, or trying to, the franchise trying to move from the younger to the older out the other way. So the older car park will grow, will become larger. This is just a fact. It's something we all know. So given that that's an issue, we do see that in the medium term, the franchise dealers will need to compete more strongly with independents on that. Because they have more operations per car on the 7+ year park compared to the younger car park, that will perhaps be able to offset some of the revenue losses that the franchise dealers are going to be facing on the younger car side of things. The service plan penetration, retention tool penetration needs to increase. One way this can happen is on used cars. Having leased used cars with a bundled service package as well is something we see as an opportunity area for the franchised world. And then tyre replacement becoming a very strong element of the repair and maintenance world for BEVs in the future. This is an area where franchise dealers, independents can focus on more than they currently do to try and capture more of that market and get the customers in the workshop and then upsell them on some of the other services that they can offer. So thank you very much for your time. That was a presentation by ICDP. If you've got any questions, we'll take them in a little bit, or you can send us an email or get in touch after the event. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Gareth. Liam?
Thank you, Gareth, for that mostly terrifying outlook on the future of after-sales and electric vehicles. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Just going to take you through a few slides from an EMAC perspective. So hopefully most of you know who EMAC are. We've been coming here long enough. What we wanted to do was, in conjunction with the ICDP, commission some focus groups, because there's lots of interesting insight and data and research around electrification, but not necessarily specifically around retention products, which is the space that EMAC operate in. So a little bit about what EMAC do. So really, we partner with car dealers and manufacturers, and we white label their retention solutions. So we offer really flexible products through our technology, always on a white label basis, working in collaboration with a lot of different car manufacturers and car dealers. And we do that on scale. So we work with 16 different car manufacturers. We've got close to 2 million customers under our administration at any one time. And we're a major collector of consumer funds. So annually, close to 7.5 million direct debits, or more and more now, that's subscription payments facilitated through our technology. And really, this is the reason why car manufacturers and dealers want to collaborate with EMAC, because we take away a lot of the admin overhead and managing some of these retention programs. So a bit of background on why we wanted to do what we did with Gareth and the team. Well, really, against the backdrop of car manufacturers looking to go direct to consumers on new vehicle sales, and the vehicles that they're likely to be selling in the mid to longer term, they're all going to be electric vehicles, and some of those electric vehicles don't need as much servicing or longer service intervals. It means for companies like us, we're taking stock and thinking, hang on a minute, how does a service plan work in the future? Does that need to be broader than just a service plan solution? Are customers going to be interested in spreading the cost of something when it's just a lesser amount from their ICE equivalent? So we really wanted to focus in on customers that were in market for buying an ICE vehicle, or already had a BEV vehicle and were interested in those types of retention products. There's lots of interesting insight from lots of experts around why would you buy a BEV and the costs associated, but not necessarily around the after-sales piece. So manufacturers, I think, have got an idea, car dealers have got an idea, but because we haven't got a B2C relationship, we want to go direct to consumers to find out what their thoughts were around retention products. So we had some focus groups. Again, we want those to be independent, so not led by EMAC, where we asked a broad range of questions around retention solutions, split mainly into 3 specific sections. So their awareness of BEV ownership. Did consumers really understand the differences between what they've been used to driving and what they will be driving in the not too distant future? Their awareness overall of an ownership package, have they already got one? Are they interested in buying one in their future vehicle? And then really expectations around anything that's specifically required for a BEV ownership package in comparison to an ICE vehicle. So we're going to give you a little bit of feedback from the consumers around a quite specific element of the consumer focus groups that we did. There's loads more collateral available if anyone is interested in getting that after this presentation. I think one of the really key things that customers came back to tell us was it has to be very, very modular. It needs to be very, very tailored to my specific requirements. So EMAC presented a number of different packages. We're in quite a privileged position where we work with so many different car manufacturers who are already selling retention products on electric vehicles, that we're able to present 3 or 4 different options to prospective and existing BEV owners to say, these are some examples, some packages. We want you to allocate a cost that you think would be appropriate for that package, and talk to us about what the inclusions are that we're presenting to you and whether or not you like those inclusions. And the feedback across every single consumer we spoke to was, I like that, but I don't like that. Or I've already got that element from somewhere else. Or my mate down the road works for Quick Fit, so I'm always going to have my tyres done by him. So without the very, very modular approach to retention solutions, most consumers were saying, I'd want something that's all-encompassing, because I don't really know the difference between an electric vehicle and an ICE vehicle. So I want something, but I want it to be specific to my needs. I'd give you a very specific example. So one of the things we talked about was home charging units. So if you're a particular second-hand vehicle purchaser of an electric vehicle, it's the first time you moved into an EV, you've probably not got a home charging unit installed on your house. That's quite a financial pinch point for consumers, where it's kind of north of £600, £700, £800. Customers were saying they liked the idea of being able to include that as part of an EV ownership package and spreading the cost of that £700, £800. But that isn't for everyone, because some of those people already have a home charging unit, so they wouldn't want that particular element. And if they didn't have the ability to remove it, they wouldn't buy the package at all. So consumers are absolutely looking for a very, very modular approach to these types of solutions. As I said, there's a whole stack of other consumer feedback that comes with this that's helping EMAC to inform the conversations that we're having with our manufacturing dealer partners around the different types of things that could be included in as part of an electric, specific electric retention package. And I guess the high-level exec summary from us is around some of these bullets. So consumers in the main are interested in retention solutions. Good news for us, good news for dealers. They don't really understand the differences between what they've previously had and what they're now buying. But individual requirements never really align between one customer and the next. You know, if you've got an early adopter, they've already got their electric home charging unit. Some other people might not have that. You've got to have a very modular approach to these different types of solutions. All of them said that they just want peace of mind. So we talked to these consumers about the differences, and quite frankly, it went over their heads quite a lot of the time. They just want peace of mind. They want to buy something and know that it's going to be taken care of at the point when something, whether it's a service or a tyre replacement, whether they just want all that to be taken care of as part of that retention package. But as a bare minimum, they do want something different. So we've seen providers go to market with something that looks a lot like an ICE retention solution. It maybe just got a green badge on it somewhere, and that doesn't really fulfill the requirements of an electric vehicle driver. They want something that's specific to their requirements, but they don't actually know what those requirements are. So we've got to help them on that journey if we want to try to retain these customers moving forward. And flexibility was a really strong theme throughout these conversations. So we've got to work with manufacturer and dealer partners to produce something that works for the majority of consumers, but actually has a very modular approach to the individual and itemized elements. So you've got to find creative ways to offer a package that works for the majority of consumers, but give them that option to take specific elements out. And that could be something like a home charging unit. That could be something like a tile repair and maintenance plan that sits alongside their standard service plan solution. So there's a whole stack of feedback that we took from these focus groups. They were really enlightening and helped to inform the conversations that we're now having with our partners. So if anyone wants to hear any more about any of those packages that we proposed, then feel free to come and find us at our stand. And that was it for my whistle-stop tour.
Thank you very much. Now we move into questions. If you've got one, please raise your hand. I think we've got roving mics. Is that correct? Somebody nod. Hey, thank you, Kate. Anybody got a question? Not yet. So I've got one or two, luckily. Is there a role for dealers to be educators? No one, I presume, needs to be told how a petrol engine works or how to keep it on the road. Is there a sort of a championing of the technology that's required in the dealer, independent or franchise dealer network that you're conscious of?
I mean, certainly from the conversations that we're having, particularly with some of the new entrants to the market, consumers are liking the product when they're going for test drives, but actually asking the question, I've not really heard of this particular brand, I don't really understand the technology, I like it now, I've been in it, but how do I know you're going to be here in 12 months' time? Where do I take it for service? Some of these new entrants, and even the likes of Tesla, they don't really have a traditional repair network available to them. So consumers are asking questions of dealers when they're interested in transitioning from an ICE to a BEV, and I think we've got to help customers in that journey, that they are interested in where they take their vehicle should something go wrong with it. I think just throwing it open to the lap of the gods to say take it to your local independent specialist is not really appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important just to reiterate what Liam said, that people at the moment are going in with questions about BEVs, but these are the early adopters. These are the people who already know more than the average consumer. As BEVs become even more mainstream, we get the average person, they're going to know even less about BEVs than the current early adopters do. So I think there's a really strong role for dealers, for everyone to be educating consumers about what the issues are around after sales for BEVs, what the service schedules are like, what the requirements are, where the pain points are, and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, I agree. I think it's a very important role that needs to be picked up.
Okay, brilliant. This time last year, we talked about some the countries in Europe that are early adopters that you can learn from. Norway was one that was championed. Is there much that you can, subsequent to the last, point, your presentation, was it your presentation last year?
Yeah.
In the last 12 months, has there been any more maturity that we can learn from?
Not really, I think, is the answer. We're not seeing much change in terms of what's going on in Norway. They are starting to open up a little bit more in terms of what they're willing to share, in terms of the pain points, the issues. Until now, they've been a little bit reticent, I think, to talk about some of the issues the dealers are facing, perhaps because they don't want to scare everyone else off from BEVs. But they are now opening up and kind of being a bit honest and saying, look, dealers are struggling, both on the new car side because of the reduced margins they're getting on BEVs, but also on the after-sales side with the reduced volumes and revenues that they're bringing in. So they are needing to diversify their business model to really kind of cut back on some of their costs and really focus on improving the overall robustness of what they're offering to be able to survive this challenge that is clearly facing the entire industry.
Sure. You talked both, you used the word in the future, a lot of emphasis on what will happen, but are there any dealers out there that are championing it, actually proving to be best practice or best in market? Have you seen any evidence of dealers really picking this up and running with it?
I mean, from an EMAP perspective, the short answer is yes, we definitely have. I mean, we've got some OEMs that we work with who are already seeing north of 70% penetration of retention products on their pure BEV sales. And there's a number of different reasons for that. One is that they have creative ways to get the dealers to do things they might not necessarily want to do, but also there's products out there that consumers want to buy. So that peace of mind aspect really plays into what this particular car manufacturer's doing. They're seeing 70% pen, so it's not like we're seeing more BEV sales and significant drop in retention products available. It's parallel, and in some instances higher than what it is on ICE vehicles.
Cool. Okay. I was going to say, tyres has always been a leakage point for dealers. Why will EVs make any difference?
I think there's two elements of that. The first is the underlying improved retention that I think BEVs bring to franchise dealer world in terms of service and repair requirements, that to a greater or lesser degree that will follow through into tyres as well. If they're already taking their car into the franchise dealer to have it serviced and repaired out towards 6 years compared to 4 years for a traditional ICE vehicle, then I think it naturally follows that the tyres will follow at the same time. I think the second angle is also, well, it comes from the manufacturers, I think, to a certain degree. When you have certain vehicles, and I won't pick on any manufacturers in particular, but some BEVs do have very unusual tyre sizes that are not well stocked by independent tyre providers. They are much easier for consumers to get a replacement tyre quicker at a franchise dealer who is stocked up to provide this already. So I think that if that trend is to continue, and it is one that there's no indication that it won't continue, I think, then that could help the franchise world in terms of keeping that retention.
Yep. Are there any questions? Thank you. Good. Microphone, come on.
Hi, Chris Green, Regit Cars. Liam, question for you in terms of the focus groups that you did. When you look at some of the emerging OEMs that are coming in, so like the Chinese EV brands, BYDs, even Polestar, Genesis, Fisker, etc., buying these cars without a local location, i.e. dealership, is one thing, but in terms of servicing them, getting work done, etc., no one wants to travel 50 miles or 100 miles if that's the perception.
Yeah.
Did you cover any of that in the focus groups? Is there a worry or a concern about buying some of these brands where they haven't effectively got a local dealer to take the car to?
Yeah, we did cover that, Chris. It's a great question. I mean, it's a very, very complex picture when you start being brand specific. I think you've got some OEMs, I know Tesla being the primary example, where they sell their cars on the back of zero requirement to ever go and visit a Tesla garage in the future. But that's going to be a proportion of BEV buyers, but not all of them. So some of the new entrants to the market are desperately reliant upon the big dealer groups who have brand representation and in a way that they currently don't. So they've got a very, very different set of requirements from the likes of Tesla. But it's a question that we've seen, and some of the new entrants saying to us, look, I've got customers in my cars liking the product, going for test drives and asking me, what do I do when the car goes wrong? So they need to find answers to those questions, whether that's their own network of repairers, whether that's a network of specialists, or they partner up with an independent outfit. It's just a really complex picture when you start delving into quite brand-specific things.
Thanks, Chris. Any more? Sir?
Hiya, Darren from Aftersales in a startup. Quick question, do you see mobile service forming a part of this type of sort of offering, owing to the way that a BEV works? There's no oil, there's no dangerous fluids.
Yeah, again, the short answer is yes. And particularly some of the bigger dealer groups are already doing that. So we already have an engagement with one of our dealer groups who've expanded their mobile servicing fleet with a specific focus on electric vehicles. So it comes back to that element of convenience. So if you're driving this EV and it suddenly doesn't start for whatever reason, you're not going to want someone to turn up and tow it away for you. You're going to want someone to come and fix it for you on your drive. So I think it's logistically a lot easier for some of the big corporate PLCs to do that within their fleet of mobile servicing. But I think there are ways in which some of the mid and smaller dealer groups can do more than what they're currently doing. So yeah, I think there's definitely a place for it.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just touch on that, clearly Tesla have used mobile servicing for a long time already, and mobile repairs to a certain degree. I think given that BEVs, you don't have the fluid angle that you have on the ICE vehicles, it is easier to do mobile servicing. And we're seeing things like Trust Ford have really expanded their mobile servicing fleet, focused on fleets and the business consumers. So I think that the business angle is one where it might come out more strongly to start with and then shift over onto the retail side for regular consumers over the coming years. But I think mobile is a key part of the picture that is perhaps missing at the moment.
I've got one more. How severe is the EV skills shortage? How serious is it in preventing dealers from exploiting this opportunity?
I don't want to say very, but it is significant. We're seeing, and I'll just move away from the UK for a moment, we are seeing skills shortages on the repairer side across most European markets at a general level, let alone at the BEV specific level. I very briefly mentioned it, but one of the big issues that we're seeing dealers mentioning to us is they're training their technicians up and then they're being poached by someone else, so they're investing all the time and effort into managing that skills shortage, and it's being taken away from them without kind of, I guess, their consent to a certain degree. So I think that will continue to be an issue going forward until we kind of get a stronger baseline in terms of BEV trained technicians.
Alrighty. Let's say thank you to Liam and Gareth in the traditional way. Thanks very much.